Hello children, I am back with a basic concept, that is latitudes and longitude. I have been teaching the students for so many years. I find that children really confuse with latitudes and longitudes. Even if I teach them that particular movement, they understand. Their concept is clear. But if I again ask them the latitudes and longitude, they confuse. For longitude, they will tell me that it is latitude. For latitudes, they will tell me it is longitudes. So, children, you should know your basic concepts. That any time if it has been asked what is latitudes and longitudes, your concept related to this should be very, very clear. So, I have tried to clear this particular doubts. And I hope you will surely like this particular basic topic of latitudes and longitudes. Okay, I am Mrs. Veena Latkar. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe to my channel, that is Veena Latkar. So let's begin with today's topic, that is latitudes and longitudes. So this is, I have tried to take this picture of latitudes. Okay, so this is, first we'll try to learn about latitudes. So what is this latitudes? Okay, so this latitudes are the lines which run parallel to the equator. Okay, so the lines which run parallel to the equator are called as the lines of latitudes. Okay, so before understanding this particular latitudes, let's try to understand this equator. What is this equator? Equator is the line, imaginary lines. These are all the imaginary lines. When you are walking on the surface of the earth, you won't find these lines drawn on the surface of the earth. These are imaginary lines drawn on the globe. So what is a globe? Globe is nothing but the complete miniature model of the earth. Okay, so this equator, which is at 0 degree, divides the earth into two halves. So two halves what? Okay, two halves, that is north and south. Okay, so the earth gets divided into two halves by the equator, into two halves, that is you have the north and the south. Okay, so to the north of the equator, this is the equator. Okay, this is the equator. To the north of equator, so the regions in this particular north, I'll try to show it in a different color, so maybe you will. So this is to the north, you have, or this particular region is called as northern hemisphere. Okay, and the regions to the south of the equator, we call it as the southern hemisphere. Okay, so the equator divides the earth, this equator divides the earth into two halves, that is north and the south. So this is north pole and this is south pole. Okay, now there are imaginary lines, that is lines running parallel to the equator, literally parallel, they are same distance. Okay, so the lines, they don't meet each other. So the lines which run parallel to the equator, they are called as the lines of parallels, or they are called as the lines of latitudes. So these lines which is there, then how many lines are there? Okay, so or how many degrees of latitudes? Literally they form an angle. Supposing this is the center interior of the earth. Okay, so they form an angle. So this is one angle. Okay, this is one angle. So they form the angle from the center to this particular area. So the angular distance. Okay, so this is the angle which is formed. Okay, so try to understand this basic concept. Okay, so this angular distance which is there, that is then how many degrees of latitudes are there. Okay, so there are 90 degrees of latitudes to the north. Okay, 90 degrees from here, 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, then you have 90 degrees. Okay, so you have 90 degrees of latitudes. This north pole is at 90 degrees north. Okay, and south pole is at 90 degrees. Okay, so there is, that is 90 degrees of latitudes from the equator. Over here you have 90 degrees of latitudes to the north and 90 degrees of latitudes to the south. Then if somebody asks you the question, that is how many degrees of latitudes are there, so don't just say blindly that is 90 plus 90, of course 180 degrees of latitudes, no doubt about it. You have 180 degrees of latitude, but you have to count even the equator also. So plus 1 equator, then that is total you have 181 degrees of the latitudes. Okay, so please keep it in mind. Of course, if there is no option of 181, then you can write it as 180. So 90 degrees to the north, 90 degrees to the south. But when it is asked if both the options 180 and 181, please do write as 181. Okay, so you have 90 degrees of latitudes to the north, 90 degrees of the latitudes to the south. Okay, so through this latitude, we come to know about the climatic changes in the surface of the earth. Then how do you come to know the changes in the climate? If you see, the sun rays over here is falling directly on the equator, but as you move to the north, it is colder. Okay, so as you move to the north pole and south pole, it is coldest one. Then the next concept which you have to understand is, that is 23.5 degrees north, 23.5 degrees north and 23.5 degrees south. So what is that line called as? At 23.5 degrees north, you have Tropic of Cancer. Tropic of Cancer. Okay, it is called Tropic of Cancer. Then you have at 23.5 degrees south, 23.5 degrees south, you have Tropic of Capricorn. Okay, you have Tropic of Capricorn. So please don't forget Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer. Okay, so 23.5 degrees north is what? Tropic of Cancer. Okay, and you have 23.5 degrees south, it is Capricorn. Okay, so this is about Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. Then another line you have at 66.5 degrees. Okay, 66.5 degrees north, you have the Arctic line or the Arctic Circle, and same at 66.5 degrees south, 66.5 degrees south, you have Antarctic. You have Antarctic Circle. Okay, so don't forget Antarctic line at 66.5 degrees north and 66.5 degrees south, you have the Antarctic Circle. Okay, so this is what you have to remember about latitudes. So what are latitudes? The lines which run parallel to the equator is latitudes. So how many degrees of latitudes? You have 90 degrees at the north and you have 90 degrees at the south. Okay, so what is this equator? Equator divides the earth into two halves. So how two halves? That is northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. Okay, so this was about the latitudes. So let's try to understand what is longitudes. Okay, so what is this longitudes now? Okay, children, so I'll just try to zoom this particular thing. So what is longitudes? The lines which run in a semicircular direction. Semicircular direction. Okay, they don't run parallel. So the lines running from north to south in a semicircular direction, okay, they are called as the longitudes. Okay, so again I am repeating, the lines running in the north-south direction, okay, and in a semicircular direction, they are called as the longitudes. Then how many degrees of longitudes? And one longitude which is at 0 degree, what is it that called? So we had studied in latitudes at 0 degree, we had an equator that divided the earth into two halves. Okay, now this 0 degrees of longitudes divides the earth into western hemisphere and the eastern hemisphere. Remember please children, this 0 degrees of longitude, what is it called as? This is called as prime meridian. This is called as prime meridian. So what is this prime meridian doing? This prime meridian divides the earth into two halves. How two halves? Western hemisphere and the eastern hemisphere. Okay, then how many degrees of longitudes are there? Okay, so how many degrees of longitudes are there? Actually, if you see, the earth is round. Okay, so the angle formed from the center of the earth, so should be how many? So just remember the circle. Okay, so the circle forms how much degree? So it is same like that. Okay, so this you will find 360 degrees, children. Okay, but you will not find 360 written. You will find it 180 degrees written over there on the globe. Okay, so you don't try to find where is 200 degrees and all. So how is that written on the globe over here? So if this is a prime meridian, okay, from this to the eastern side, you have 10 degrees, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, up till where? Up till 180 degrees. Okay, so 180 degrees to the east and 180 degrees to the west. So where is that 180 degrees then? This zero which is there, this prime meridian which passes through Greenwich near London. This is Greenwich near London over here, which is there. From here, just opposite of the 0 degrees, behind, what is that? That is 180 degrees. And that 180 degree which is there, it is an international date line. Okay, and this 0 degree which is there, which divides the earth into two, that is western hemisphere and the eastern hemisphere, which tells you about the time. Okay, when you go, the time is to the east, the time is ahead, and as you go to the west, the time is behind. Okay, because the sun rises first in the eastern side, so from the eastern side as we calculate, so this time is ahead in the eastern side, and as you go to the west, you will find it is behind. Okay, so this is first concept which you have to remember. I'll be coming back with a new video related to how to calculate the time, okay, with the help of this longitudes, and that is from that international date line. That is also very important. So before coming with that video, I wanted to make clear the concept of this longitudes. So again I am repeating, the line which is that 0 degree, it is called as the prime meridian. Okay, so what is this prime meridian? Which is at 0 degree, passes through Greenwich near London. Okay, it divides the earth into western hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. So how many degrees of longitudes are there? There are, that is 180 degrees of longitudes to the east and 180 degrees of longitudes to the west. So total 360 degrees of longitudes. Okay, so this particular concept you should understand, and I hope your concepts related to latitudes and longitudes are very, very clear. If any doubts, please inbox me and ask these doubts. I'll be coming back with the next video about the time zones, which is a very, very important topic, and I am interested in bringing back that topic of the time zones. So bye for now, and if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe to my channel. Bye.